Welcome to Between Two Chairs, Demystifying Commercial Real Estate, the podcast that brings you the latest insights and trends on the South Florida commercial real estate market, with your hosts, Fernando Arencibia Jr. and Jennifer Woolman. In each episode, we dive into the world of commercial real estate and break down complex concepts to make them accessible for everyone. Whether you're a real estate professional, a curious investor, or just interested in the South Florida market in general, Between Two Chairs is the podcast for you. So pull up a chair and join us.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Between Two Chairs. My name is Fernando Arencibia, and with me is the traveling guru that is Jennifer Woolman. If you have any questions about traveling, doing it the right way, using all the points, twisting arms,
Ask ChatGPT.
You ask Jennifer and she'll give you the prompt to ChatGPT. That's how this is going to work.
Hey, living in Miami, it's the best place as a jump off spot to travel from. It's so sure. Easy to travel just about anywhere in the world from here. And the great thing is no matter where I go, when I come back, I'm like, nothing beats Miami. I love being home. And, I've lived in a lot of places where I couldn't say that, where it'd be like, okay, I wish I were back on vacation. Yeah. But Miami, it's like we live on vacation.
Yeah. Oh, no, it's incredible.
Even though we're working.
Yeah. But talking about Miami as a jumping off point, it has also become a place where people not only love to visit, but many have decided to stay. So I think it's a very natural progression into the topic of this
podcast, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to be talking about wealth migration into South Florida today. And one of the reasons I think this is such a great topic is because people love to hate on Miami. And to me, that's just a sign of success. It's like the more naysayers and everything you get, they try to beat you down if they're not a part of it. So it's really funny because every time something posts on LinkedIn, like I'll do boom, when Palantir came, I was like boom, and people are like, it doesn't mean anything. Right. They're only moving there for the residency to avoid taxes. The wealth is going to have zero effect. I'm like, oh, you guys are so clueless. So if you're, stop listening to naysayers. If you live, work, or play or visit Miami, you know that we're on a ride. Yeah. We've been on rides before. Right. It's a typical boom bust kind of area, like just about every area in the world is that's been successful. But this one kind of feels different this time. The amount of energy that's here, it's not just the money that's coming in, it's the energy, the creativity, the tech, the excitement that it's palpable. You can feel it in the city when we go to meetings, when we're meeting with clients who are thinking of opening businesses here.
Well, what's really interesting about this topic and when you analyze wealth migration is that I was thinking through this, Jennifer, there are a lot of topics that we've covered in other podcasts that are going to be applicable here. When we've spoken about this business being it's really about a study of labor and demographics and how that is so intertwined with what happens in commercial real estate. When you're looking at what shifts in regards to the immediacy that some asset classes are going to get a boost when you have this wealth migration, and then the gradual growth of other asset classes as a result of that, how retail follows rooftops, for example. And so there's so much to break down when you're looking at the wealth migration into South Florida. It's not enough just to say that this has been happening since the pandemic, and the pandemic accelerated, but this was already coming.
It's true. The pandemic did accelerate, but the foundation was laid before then, and people were already starting to look at Miami. I mean, I should say South Florida, but you guys know from listening to this podcast, when we say Miami, we mean Palm Beach down.
It's all of South
but
Florida.
I always have to do that. But so when we look at this area, the foundation was already being laid. Part of it was when Amazon was looking at a place to put their new headquarters, and the 3 counties finally really got together and realized that we needed to work as one to solve a bunch of issues and to address, housing affordability and infrastructure, et cetera. And so since then, that has only accelerated.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting because you pointed out to a map that Peter Griffith had posted on LinkedIn, and it was a 2023 map from Realtor.com showing the wealth migration. And it's so funny because I looked at that, and the green, like they color code the map, obviously. Right. And so it's either like a magenta / purple, then pink, then lighter shades of pink, then like sage green. Yeah. And then you hit Florida. And Florida is solid forest green. And the title of the Realtor.com was just "New Map Shows Extent of Post-Pandemic Wealth Migration with Billions Flowing into Florida." That was 2023.
That's right.
Since then, just this year, here are some of the things that have happened in the first quarter. Palantir moves their headquarters here at a $322 billion market cap.
Right.
Larry Page and Sergey Brin, founders of Google, Zuckerberg, Ellison, all brought over $1 trillion of their wealth from California.
Right.
Stanford says that the loss, and this is from Saif Yusuf, does a great job tracking, especially because he helps tech companies come here and connect them with the people and the places to grow their business. But Stanford says that the wealth tax of California is going to cost the state $25 billion.
Wow.
We've got Vanderbilt University moving here, and a lot of the momentum that started with Stephen Ross and Kevin Griffith. And people say, oh no, they're moving, they're just coming here for the taxes, they're just coming for the taxes, but they're not. They're putting their money into projects. They are buying buildings, they are building buildings, they are developing, they are doing philanthropy, they're encouraging other people to come. So, it's real. And
it's interesting because what we're seeing is, so Florida is not only growing, but it's almost like it's absorbing wealth. You have over $20 billion in income that has migrated into Florida, and that's just the beginning. And it's not a population move. It's almost like the balance sheet has shifted to South Florida. And to your point, I don't think anyone who has come, whether it's Ken Griffin or Ross or all these big companies that have made their migration here, a lot of these headquarters follow the CEOs, right? And the other thing that happens is that no move is done unintentionally, or is it done without a plan?
Correct.
And so when you look at the work of Ken Griffin, and he came in, he instantly became one of the most charitable philanthropist in the history of South Florida. He came in with that mindset. He wanted to invest in the place where he wants to make a home for his company and his employees and for himself for the long term. So, the people that are coming here are coming with a mindset of that long term. And it's not enough to say, okay, what happens when that money flows and what happens to real estate and to commercial real estate. But for the people that look at Palantir and they say, well, that's not going to make a big deal, whatever, is the question is a question of the chicken and the egg, and what comes first. And the reality is that when you're looking, for example, at the office sector, which we have had for years, one of the top office markets when the rest of the country has really, really suffered. And there are bifurcations on that market between Class A and everything else.
Correct.
But even in Class C, we're doing better than the nation. And part of it is that you could say that these companies have come here and then the talent follows, but that's really not the case. The talent has migrated here. There's also a lot of great homegrown talent, and the companies follow that talent. And so that's an important component when you're looking, for example, at the office sector. You're looking at the different asset classes at the top of the list just because of the sheer size of people that are moving here. The multifamily sector is the one that benefits the most in most immediacy. But what follows rooftops is retail. We've had a very healthy retail sector that continues to grow because now you have to provide all the services and the amenities and everything that people are looking for as the population growth. And then you're looking at logistics, and we live in this world where there's so much e-commerce, and that conversation about the last mile aspect of the logistics, infrastructure becomes even more important. I even heard now that there are some warehouses that were not considered last mile, but now because density has grown in certain areas, they are being the solution to that last mile warehousing. So it's really interesting, the dynamic. And so now the question is that obviously the phrase growing pains is not there, for no good reason. How much of investments are we going to need to make to the infrastructure to deal with traffic, to deal with, all the things that happen, when you have rapid growth?
Right. Well, and I think some of our government entities are better at preparing for the future than others. I'd give a negatives to FDOT and some of their lack of planning. Like, we talk about that horrible off-ramp off of 836 going to the airport, which is one lane for one of the largest airports in the U.S. and one of our biggest feeders. And now not only that, but it's an off-ramp that's going to bypass that goes by the soccer arena and New Freedom Park. And so that was poor planning, but then you have very positive forward-thinking planning, which is the Port Authority and the airport. Airport and American Airlines Arena within the airport is spending over $1 billion to redo Gate D, which is all of their international flights and everything. They're adding 17 new gates. It's a $9 billion modernization. So I think there is some lag, and the growing pains come from that, right? Because MIA is not going to be pleasant for a while, right? When there's certain parts under construction. Same thing with the highways. I feel like I-95 has been under construction since I moved here over 30-something years ago. And it has been, especially the segment between Palm Beach and Broward. So I think that some of those pain points, though, also create huge opportunities for alternative transportation. So we're starting to see way more of the Waymo and other types of alternative transport. We're also starting to see a much bigger desire to live and play closer to where you work. So, Miami-Dade is a huge county. So I think, if you live in Homestead and you have to go to North Miami Beach for that's a horrible commute, right? Even though you're in the exact same county. But so Homestead is doing a really good job of trying to create incentives to bring employment so that people don't have to drive as far. And we're seeing more of that. Into your earlier point about multifamily and densities, we're starting to see that. So where are the pressure points? Well, we built a lot of multifamily along the transportation corridor. So we have high vacancy rates, right? But they're not as high as the rest of the country. There's still a lag. We have seen a decrease in overall effective rents, but that's going to be caught up with, as people move here. And so nothing is ever 100% perfect 100% of the time, because you do have a growth spurt, and then everybody has to kind of settle into that growth and plan the next phase of the cycle. But I wanted to touch on your point about the retail, because, I love retail. And so I was thinking about this the other day with Dadeland. Well, not the other day, it was really like 4 months ago. But I look at what Dadeland was when we got here. So there was a Bloomingdale's, there was a JCPenney's. It was, this mall that everybody would go to in the summer because there was AC and it's inside, and huge parking lot, and, super easy to get to, centrally located, lots of stores, a food court, typical mall. Now there's like Dolce & Gabbana, there's there's, Dick's Sporting Goods has a huge room, a huge place inside with climbing walls. And like, it's definitely a place to go, even if you're not buying anything, just for the cool stuff that there is to do in there. You have the food court, yes, but then you have very upscale restaurants, and they've done outdoor seating. They built a hotel right on their property, and they wouldn't have been able to do that without the increase in wealth, right? Because the shoppers wouldn't be there for those kind of retailers. So seeing that transformation excites me. It's scary because for people who have lived here for a long time or who are native to here, I understand that this isn't the Miami we moved to, right? It's way more expensive. We used to be considered affordable. I don't know if, we might still be affordable in comparison to other countries in the world, like maybe London, Zurich for sure. I know for sure Zurich. We're cheaper than Zurich. And, Hong Kong and stuff like that. But we used to be a lot cheaper within the United States and a retirement haven and all that. And we're not. We've expanded. We've expanded our economy. So we're not just a tourist and a place for people to come to retire, right? We're that, but we're also this logistics and huge economic engine. And, some people are like, oh, it's horrible. Miami isn't what it was. I'm going to leave. And those are the people that we do see leaving because of affordability or transportation or traffic. For me, it's not the Miami I moved to. Yeah. But the Miami I moved to was amazing, but it's still pretty amazing. It's just different. There's a lot more excitement. There's a lot of vitality, and you can still, within Miami, move to areas that aren't the hustle and bustle of Brickell or Miami Beach, right? So there's still a lot of diversity.
And there was also another trend that had been happening many years before the pandemic, which was that we were starting to become a city of neighborhoods, which we were really never before. Right. So with the development of, let's say, downtown Doral, for example, if we've spoken about this before, Doral is a city that doubles in size from 9 to 5 because it has so many centers of employment. But in the weekend, if you live in Doral, which is a beautiful place to live, and you have a lot of parks, and there wasn't really the amenities. So if you wanted to have a nice dinner, if you wanted to have a nice experience, go to the movie theater, people would go to Coconut Grove, they would drive all the way to the beach, they would go other places rather than stay there because there wasn't that life, that amenities, and that has totally shifted because now everything is sort of self-sustained, and we're seeing that happen in other parts of the city of Miami, where now you have those areas where you don't really have to leave to get those experiences, and it's become a really interesting dynamic in that growth. One of the things that to look out for in the multifamily sector, as you mentioned, is we had this incredible amount of growth in rents really took a huge spike. We are obviously on the other side of that, and now it's more about sustained demand and being able to not have those spikes, right? We're seeing that the prices are leveling off, but the spike already happened. And so one of the things that I'm noticing in the commercial real estate sector is that people are holding onto their properties longer than they historically have done in the past, right? Because they experienced that spike, and now, where they might have had an exit, a 7-year exit, now that number has increased dramatically. I don't know if you've seen that in other sectors, but I just think that we're seeing less transactionals on, if you're just counting sites, and I think it's in a variety of sectors.
Well, I think to stay on the multifamily, I think something that's super interested, and Enrique and I have been talking about this for a while. I'm like, I think there's going to be a huge condo conversion breeze that's going to blow in. It's going to be more like a strong wind. I don't want to use the H word, but because if you think about when I think about Brickell, right, and when they first built the Mark, which was back in 1990 something. So the Mark was originally being built as a rental community, and I believe it was, I believe it was Perez with the related group, I'm pretty sure, who built that, and it was going to be a rental community similar to the yacht club, which is next door.
Right.
And as they started construction, most of the condos that were built at that time were 1980s or older, and so he built it as a condo. And I told friends of mine who wanted to invest, I'm like, buy in this condo because it's the newest condo. There's nothing like, right. It's over a decade more recent than any of the other stuff. It's right on the water, etc. Then they went through a condo building phase. We had the 2007 bust, but now it's the opposite. We've been building super, super high-end luxury condos, correct. But we haven't been building the affordable condos, and the affordable condos have always been the foot in the door entry level to first-time home buyers, right? And Danielle Blake always said, that's your first time in. And there have been a lot of changes to condo rules and regs and financing recently, which we've spoken about in other episodes. But I wanted to do a shout out to Anna Bozovic from Anna Analytics because she's highlighting how a new developer is converting a Miami apartment project to condos. Halfway through construction, they decided to do this. It's the Havana Enclave, and they're going to start at around $300,000. That is entry level in our market. And so I think this is going to be the mark of our time, right? It's a brand new building, so you don't have all the issues that you had with condos. You have the new laws to protect it moving forward from not having reserves and everything else. So those are the kind of shifts that I think we're going to start seeing that then is going to settle out the affordability issue. And yes, a lot of those older condos are going to be torn down and developed into something, luxury if they're on the water, but not the inland ones, right? Yeah. So and this is a great example.
Well, and I also think it's interesting because I was having a conversation with someone today about the allegory of the farmer, where things happen to the farmer and the farmer response is good, bad, who's to know?
Right.
And when I look at these things that we might call growing pains, and what I see is that just like necessity is the mother of invention, it's going to force us to address those issues in a creative way. And we're going to find a way to accommodate to those things in ways that we right now are not even considering or imagining, right? And so that's going to be really interesting, how a population in flux that continues to grow, when you have this shift of wealth, when you have this shift of intentionality, and we should say, it's not only wealth, it's now you're bringing a lot of high-paying jobs to the local market. It's not like all these companies just came here saying, well, we're going to make sure that every employee moves. No, not every employee moves. That's not the way it works. It's because they see a pool of talent and an opportunity here. And you're seeing that there's an investment in education at all levels. And so, it's going to be really interesting what this looks like 10, 15, 20, 25 years from now. The answer that I give to people when they ask me about, well, are they going to be able to buy something in the future, especially young people, specifically my daughters, when they say, and I say, well, it may not look like what you're seeing now, but it may be more suited to the lifestyle that you want to live.
Right.
I have an older daughter like you. She loves EDM. She loves dance music. She likes people. She likes to be out and about. She likes to go out every day that if she can. Right. If she could afford to go to have dinner every night and not have to cook and not have to do that, she would. And the reality is that's an experience that you can definitely find in a condo like that. And you're like, okay, so there is a level of affordability that also ties into the kind of lifestyle that I want to live.
Right. It's just might not be a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, white picket fence house with, a backyard. But
correct.
But I don't want that anyway if I'm single and want to be with because I'm going to be so far away from that.
And the reality is that when I see her move around town, right, the places that she likes to go to are not close to where we are anyway, right? So imagine if now you save that travel, you may not need the car, right? Because there might be other ways of transporting. And I got to tell you, because I know you got a Tesla, and, I could say very proudly that I was there the first day that you used the auto drive. So I was just in Orlando for a meeting. I drove back with our friend George Guerra's car. I drove it back.
Oh, wow.
And he says, no, you drive back. And when I say, and he's been telling everybody he drove all the way back, and I go like, I think you're really expanding the definition of driving, because all I did was
touch the button.
Look forward,
Keep your eyes
and just pay attention and just be ready to pounce in case anything happened. Yeah. But it really is a huge shift in mindset.
It's a huge
It's a huge shift in what it means to travel. And when I took that experience, what I told them is, I've you know that I've been taking the train a lot. I love the train and all stuff, but I still got to drive to downtown.
Right.
You jump on that train,
Uber, and
then I get the Uber, all that stuff.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of other steps. Again, that last mile, which is always an issue in transportation, one way or the other. But man, to jump on the car and to be there, and then we stop halfway, charge for half an hour, grab some lunch, use the restroom, do other things, get back in the car. The car, self drives to the rest of the way. Wow. Yeah,
and it's funny because I did, I was so, I'm never going to give up my gas car, which, by the way, was diesel. And I drove by and diesel was $5.79 the other day. And I'm like, oh, I'm so happy I don't have my diesel. I don't miss it anymore. But, I did a post on how I thought retailers, if they have the parking space, because definitely some people don't have the parking space, that they should put Tesla chargers in their shops, and how they might be able to charge a premium for rents, because I was thinking, I went to go visit my brother in this tiny little town that I'd never even heard of called St. James City, which is it's like in between Captiva and not Coral Springs, Cape Coral. And so we had to stop and charge, because I'm like, I have a feeling there's going to be no Tesla chargers in St. James City, which, by the way, there aren't. So we stopped to charge it, and there was a nothing but cake right in front of the charger. And I'm like,
and what are you going to do?
What am I going to do? It's nothing but cake.
Exactly.
So I went in, spent a fortune, got my Bundt Cake membership, that I never would have gone in, but I had time to kill. I didn't want to, it was the weekend, so I wasn't going to be answering emails or anything. And then when Carlos and I went up to St. Augustine, again, we stopped at a place that we never would have stopped before. We went to this, me and pizza. We went to this little local pizza place. We sat down. We had I never would have gone there if I hadn't had to charge my car. So if you're a retailer and you guys want to put in Tesla, like nothing but cake, I'm sorry, but you should be paying a premium for being visible from the Tesla charger. So those kind of things get me thinking, because I never have experienced that before, because I never had to go to a charger, right? So
that's really interesting, because that's like when you first put your eyes on a new vehicle and you want to get that car, and all of a sudden you see it all over town. You never noticed it before, and so now you're noticing all the charging things. And
well, I have to, because I'm paranoid. I'm like, I don't want to run out with battery. How they can't just bring me a little can of gas or diesel, right?
George did tell me that this is like you get a little bit of that paranoia, like when your phone is running out of battery, but you're in the car, you're in the phone, you're driving the phone, and you're like, oh, that thing is yellow, it's getting red. And we should also say, for those retailers and all that stuff, that FPL has a great program for the installation of the charging stations, and it's a great collaborative way of setting it up in a cost-effective way. So I know that becomes very important, and it's interesting, because that's the other thing. I think we need to look at everything in the prism of changes in consumer behavior.
Correct.
And I think retailers have done that really well, because they've understood that, you and I have always said, no matter what happens with the growth of e-commerce, no matter all the years that we've heard that this is a retail killer, that retail's going to die, that's not what we have seen. But we have seen shifts in what is retail, right? Mm-hmm. And what is curated in those spaces, and the kind of experiences that people want to have, and the importance of those chargers. Mm-hmm. To, whether you're going to stop here or there. One of the things that George mentioned, and by the way, we got to have him in this podcast.
Let me put him on.
But George basically mentioned that He says this, once I saw this experience of being able to have that self-driving vehicle and feeling comfortable, it shifted my mindset as to getting a new car. I wasn't no longer looking for the shiny new vehicle. I'm just looking for the luxury of having that convenience and for that convenience to be reliable. So yeah, I think that's another component of all of this as we're seeing things migrate and grow and change, that we're also dealing with a lot of changes in consumer behavior.
Right. And just to your point, like the change in behavior and how e-commerce isn't necessarily killing retail. I was thinking about all of the signs from Amazon recently. I've been getting emails about, hey, do you want to have an Amazon pickup spot in your building? If you do, so they're trying to find ways, you can drop off your Amazon package at Whole Foods, so they're finding ways to make it more convenient for the e-commerce person by being able to go to a brick and mortar to do a return. So definitely shift in behaviors for sure.
One of the things that I remember having a conversation about, I think in 2021 or 2022, when I went to MIPIM, is we did a presentation about Miami and we labeled it the global city of the future. And I think somehow we're seeing that come to fruition. And I think that there is, this is going to be a global capital city. We already had seen a lot of different sectors that were doing extremely well within the paradigm of the story of Miami. Again, to your point, we're talking about South Florida all the way down. I remember when we were in that conference in Dubai and somebody was talking about Miami, and they say like, no, because I saw this and that, and they were really talking about
Palm Beach.
Yeah. But they were calling it Miami, right? Just because of how powerful the branding is. But I do believe that what we're seeing is the inevitability of what's happening. And one of the things that is important to consider is that this is relatively a young city. This is not a city that has been around for a very, very long time. If you look at LA, it's 400 years old. You look at cities like London, Tokyo, all the other big cities that you mentioned prior. You're talking about, in terms of age, we are adolescents. That are growing and are going through this growth, and so it's going to be really interesting how Miami preserves its flavor while taking in new ideas that inevitably come when you have people of wealth that come into a place. So that's going to be an interesting dynamic.
And Saif did point out, again, follow Saif Issouf on ISHOOF on LinkedIn, because he's so connected to the tech and big thinking tech and on a global and regional and then local scale. And he was saying, and I don't want to misquote him, but it took several decades for Silicon Valley to reach the level of venture capital that it's taken Miami 1 decade to achieve. And that just shows how rapidly, granted, a lot of it has to do with the speed of tech itself now and how accelerated it is versus the beginning days when they were starting with a computer in a garage, right? So part of it is just the type of tech and where we are in the tech for that kind of venture capital. But that's bound to bring growing pains if you think of how rapidly we've grown in a decade, right? So.
For sure. Undoubtedly. So, listeners, thank you once again for pulling up a chair and joining us.
And naysayers. Come on, let's have it. Bring it on. We would love to have a discussion.
Leave a comment. Let us know where you stand in this, and what's going to be your role in this incredible growth.
We love Miami.
Yeah, absolutely we do. Absolutely we do. Well, for Jennifer and I, we just want to thank you again for listening. And until next time, we will bid you adieu.
Adios.
Adios. Bye.